3, 4.
Just see right over there where that ghost was, because it was right over there.
And all these experiences most of the time are at night. And I'm about 50 years old now and also a Vietnam veteran, but I don't think I'd want to be down there after dark with a light or without a light.
As kids, we all wanted to know. We wanted to see the ghost. I never seen the ghost.
I can experience the stories and I feel the stories, and when you believe in something and when you feel something that strong, that's when you have that sweat and the tingle that goes up your spine.
I've heard stories of a doctor that ran experiments on the patients here and have buried the bodies in the walls and in the foundation and around in the yards around here.
Thousands of stories exist here in the Ozarks of North Arkansas and southern Missouri. In fact, it's been said there's a story beyond every hill in the Ozarks. By far the most popular stories are those of ghosts and haunted places. Come along now as we explore some of the mysteries in the Ozarks and the many stories of the haunted hills. Mysterious stories of ghosts and haunted places. Tales of broken hearts, violent deaths, and lost souls. Eerie incidents of whispers in the night, strange music, crying, screaming, clattering, howling, and visits from the angry dead. Intriguing yarns that are often spun in the firelight. Tales about these haunted hills, the ghost of the Ozarks. Whether they're true or not, they'll be told over and over again. There's the one about this old one-room school next to a cemetery near Beaver Lake in northwest Arkansas. Not many of these old country schools are left since school consolidation in the 1940s. This school, built in 1862, is one of the oldest. For years it's been told that in the late afternoon one can hear sounds of children playing in the schoolyard. But there's no one there. As I was investigating this old story, which I didn't believe was true, as I went around the corner of the building, I thought I heard, just for a moment, the sounds of children playing. And then there's the one about a family driving a wagon along an old road that once ran along the top of a bluff near the community of Joplin in northwest Arkansas. The story goes that an Indian party began chasing the wagon. As the wagon slid around a curve in the old road, it slipped over the bluff, sending the entire family to their deaths. It was a terrible way to die. something the kids evidently don't want anyone around these parts to forget. Because as people up here will tell you, on a pretty regular basis, you can hear those horses and wagon thundering and screams of the family plunging from the bluff.
Us kids would sit around together around him, and he'd tell those stories till away in the night. And his most famous one was the one about the Indians that chased in the covered wagon, or at least scared the people that were in the covered wagon. And the team ran away and run off the bluff and killed the people. And grandfather said that late of the evening, between sundown and dark, that you could go up there on the mountain where they run off this bluff, or they run off the big bluff, and where they run off this bluff, while you could go up there and listen, and you could hear at a certain time in the evening, just before dark, you could hear the wagon coming running, and then you could hear it go off the bluff and hear the people screaming.
Then there's Ghost Hollow, right smack in the middle of Fayetteville, the largest city in northwest Arkansas. Yet nobody builds houses here, or anything else for that matter, and children aren't allowed to play here. In fact, hardly anybody ever comes here except maybe on a dare. It's been this way for over a century. The legend goes that back in pioneer days, this beautiful woman was alone in her cabin the night before her wedding. She had put on her wedding dress to imagine the festivities of the next day. And while attending to the flames in the hearth, her gown accidentally caught on fire. Terrified, she fled from the cabin screaming, then ran into the woods of the hollow behind the house. As she ran, the dry woods were set on fire, and she was soon engulfed in flames. She died a horrible death. Over all the years that have followed, this place where she died has become known as Ghost Hollow. Numerous residents of the region have reported hearing a lady's screams coming from the hollow. Others hiking in the hollow have reported hearing whispers. "Where's my husband? Where's my husband?"
The first thing that was attracted to me about Ghost Hollow was that Mom and them said that we couldn't go up there. And you know, when you're a kid, you know, you're gonna go where your mama tell you not to go. And then when we get up there to the steps, there's some steps that lead over there. Well, then somebody had to be brave to be the first one to go over there. You know, as always, you know, we'd follow somebody. But, you know,
Yeah,
then we'd say, any, many, miny, mo.
Yeah, you'd
and
always
whoever it
send
was.
the smallest one in there. Go in there, man. We got you. We'll follow you. Don't worry about it. We got you.
And we were just sitting there on that rock, hugging and kissing, and it was getting late and getting dark, and the time had kind of slipped away from us. We were having a good time, and it started getting dark, and so we kind of gathered up our stuff and got off the rock and started out of the hollow when we heard a real yell, screeching, screaming, moaning type noise. And we kind of looked from the rock area off in this hollow, and we could see a kind of a light about 150 yards down there. I mean, it's dark down there at night, and this just lit up like somebody turning a light on in a house, and it just boom. And then we heard this screaming, yelling noise, just sounded like a woman or a young woman or girl screaming. It wasn't a man's voice. It was definitely a younger woman's voice, but it was a real swirling, loud. It was just like she was or whoever it was standing right in front of us. We actually never seen a body, but this light, and then it went off, and then it was just, by then it was just real dark. We left our picnic baskets and just started out there, boy, you know, when we seen this light.
Because we were scared to go in there. So and this is where we'd go. We had to sneak off. And we'd always go 4 or 5 at a time. Wasn't no 1 or 2 dudes to go in there and do that.
I'm about 50 years old now and also a Vietnam veteran, but I don't think I'd want to be down there after dark with a light or without a light, because there's definitely something down there that's, no one can explain this light, no one can explain this yelling, and this has been happening since this disaster happened to the young lady back in the early 1900s that had burned up in Ghost Holler, which is right back behind me here.
She was in the house. She was supposedly getting married or something. And she was in the kitchen, and the dress caught fire. The lady came to see me and my lady, curator of the Shiloh Museum, and she was telling the story. But there's 2 or 3 different stories about it. Something about a slave, and the lady was cooking for the slave, and her dress accidentally caught fire, and she ran out and was screaming. But it was just intriguing because as kids, we all wanted to know. We wanted to see the ghost. I never seen a ghost, but...
Now this chimney sits on a mountain near Winslow, Arkansas. The reason people in the Ozarks don't tear down these old chimneys when the house is gone is because they believe that's where the haints and the haunts live. And if you tear down the chimney, the ghost will follow you home. They also believe that lost souls often live in wells, which brings us to the story of Ghost Mountain. Back in 1936, a man lived in this cabin with his wife and baby. He was a big-time whiskey drinker, and it always made him mean as a snake. One night, he came home late, really drunk, to his wife and sick baby. "Shut that kid up," he shouted to his wife. She tended to the child, but the poor baby continued to cry long into the night. Suddenly, the man sprang up, grabbed the sick child, and ran out of the cabin toward the old well with his wife in hot pursuit. The drunken monster then threw the child into the well. His hysteric wife grabbed the rope and lowered herself into the well. Both mother and child perished when the man cut the rope with an axe. The man disappeared and was never seen or heard of again. But until this day, you can still hear the mother's screams and child's cries coming from that old well. The story of Virgin's Bluff, which is located on Table Rock Lake in southwest Missouri, is a story of unfulfilled love and the haunting that resulted from it. Moonsong was an Indian princess hopelessly in love with a dashing Spanish explorer. But her father, the chief of her people, refused to allow her to marry outside the tribe. So, in a fit of retaliation, she jumped from the bluff to her death in the waters below. Since then, people have reported seeing a beautiful Indian princess slowly walking the top of the bluff. Fishermen and pleasure boaters have reported being caught up in the turbulent water directly below the Virgin's Bluff. Boaters on the lake and residents of the region also often tell of hearing Moonsong's cries coming from the bluff at night. This is the famous Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, often referred to as the Grand Lady of the Ozarks. It is said the hotel is haunted, not only by one ghost, but by many. Over the years, numerous hotel guests as well as employees have reported seeing things they couldn't explain. One of the most commonly seen ghosts in the hotel is that of a phantom nurse, dressed in 1930s style uniform, pushing a hospital cart down the hall. She has been most often seen on the 3rd floor. The ghost of a young college girl who committed suicide by jumping from the top floor balcony has been often seen running up and down the hotel staircase. A gentleman dressed in stylish clothing of the 1890 period has been reported seen in the lobby area on numerous occasions. One assistant manager walked toward him to investigate. The figure turned and climbed the hotel stairs and disappeared. An old man no one seems to know seems to be frequently seen around the hotel. He appears and disappears. After being closed during the winter months, a housekeeper entered the hotel to begin cleaning. She unlocked the dining room door and was shocked to see a group of people sitting at a table being served by a waiter. Knowing the kitchen was closed, she called the manager, and they both returned to investigate. When they looked, the room was completely empty. The most common ghost around the hotel is that of a Swedish carpenter who fell to his death during the hotel's construction in 1886. Hotel employees refer to this mischievous apparition as Michael. Although Michael is most often seen in the laundry room area, several have also reported seeing him strolling the hotel grounds.
My office is in the basement, where there's a lot of ghost stories about that. I was going to my office in the wintertime one year with my arms full of books, and I was in an area where there weren't any doors, windows. I heard somebody whisper, "Good morning," very loud. I was surprised. I turned completely around, looking for somebody. There wasn't anybody there. Didn't dawn on me until I got to my office. It was probably Michael the ghost.
Myself and a desk clerk were working up here, and it's middle of summer. And we had an old switchboard at that time. It's one of those old type that you plug in, and you come on and say, "May I help you?" and things like that. Well, we never opened the Crescent Springs up at all, except for wedding receptions. Well, it was closed, and about 2 or 3 times there, we kept getting a call up from the Crescent Springs, and we'd answer, and somebody had taken that telephone off the hook, but you couldn't hear it. There was nobody answering. Well, I said, well, I'll go down there and check it out and see if there's not some kid down there playing a prank on us. So I went down there and opened the door up. As soon as I opened the door up, I got the biggest chill bumps over me because I knew there was somebody in there. I mean, it's so dark and so cold down there. I went back there. I took the phone off the hook, called the front desk. I said, there's nothing down here. I said, this phone's on the hook. I said, but I'm getting out of here. And so I put it on the hook, went and then ran out of there, locked the door, and came back upstairs. 5 minutes later, it's doing it again. I mean, we had 2 or 3 people plug into there and say, front desk, can I help you? And that phone was off the hook, but, there was nobody there.
Well, I've worked here about 19 years, and I never thought too much about it being haunted or anything, but I did some years ago have something real peculiar happen to me. I was checking the rooms, the vacant ready rooms, and I unlocked 214. And I had it a little bit open, and I was pushing at the doorknob, and it would feel like hands up here that would just give it a quick slam. And it did me that way 4 or 5 times. And one of the other girls was coming in 216. She was standing there at the cart, and she saw me doing this. She said, "What's the matter with you?" And I said, "I can't get the door open. Somebody's holding it." So it did me that way 4 or 5 times. So then I come through this door, and No, I went in here and I called down the front desk and asked them if anyone was in there, and they said, no, there isn't. It's reserved for tonight. And so I went and tried to open it again. It done the same thing. So I come back through here and went over here and looked in the window, and I couldn't see anything in there. So I went back through and unlocked the door, and it opened just as easy as could be. And it never had done that before or after. And one of the other girls, the first year I started, 401 done her the same way. And there was no way that people could get in or off of the roof or anything, you know. And so she went down to the front desk and asked them if anyone was in there. And they said no. And they went back up there with her, and it opened easy. And but she swore someone was holding that door.
Well, I've been with the Crescent Hotel for about a year, and it's about 2 months after I started working at the Crescent. I was up in 307, and I had heard that at one time that this was a girls' school, and I heard bells, and it was about 11:30, and it rang about 4 times, and then it stopped, and I didn't think anything of it. And 2 or 3 days later, I heard the bells again. So I went and asked one of the other employees about if they had heard any bells when I heard it, and they said no. So all I can think of is I had heard the bells ring, but no one else heard it, and there's no other bells around here except for the old church bell, and that doesn't ring except on Sundays.
My daughter was working here for a while, and she lost her pillowcases. They just disappeared out of nowhere, and I told her to tell Michael to bring them back, that you needed them. So she did, as she was going out the door to get some more, and when she came back in, there were her pillowcases underneath the couch. Where we had looked already, there were no pillowcases there before. She thought that was pretty humorous, that he would listen to her. We blame a lot of things on Michael. There was a woman checked out of 218. She and her 2 daughters had stayed in there, and they moved a rollaway in for her. She was sitting on the rollaway, wide awake, hadn't gone to bed yet. Her 2 daughters were laying in the bed, and she said she was sitting there and they were talking, and her bed started rolling. Those rollaways don't move. They have wheels, but once they're put down, they don't move very easily. And we had a couple check out, I guess it's been a month ago. The woman said that for as long as she's worn a watch, she's put it on the nightstand. She takes it off just as she sits on the bed and lays down and goes to sleep. When she woke up, her watch was not to be found. Well, it was in the bottom of her purse. And the man said, well, that's nothing. Said, my shaver was in the bathroom when I went to bed, and this morning when I woke up, it was in the windowsill in the parlor. I thought that was pretty humorous. He's not mean, he's just mischievous, ornery fellow.
We were riding up the elevator, we were going to go to the top and work our way down, and the elevator stopped on the 2nd floor. And I looked out and there wasn't anybody out there, and I asked a friend to hold the door open. And I went down, I looked to the right of the hall, and I looked to the left of the hall, looked down the stairs, there wasn't anybody in sight. So I started walking back towards the elevator door had shut. And I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, and I looked, and there's a mirror there set right by the elevator, and I looked, and I seen a girl in the mirror. She was done up in like an old-style school uniform, and her hair was done up in a bun up in the back, and she didn't say anything to me, but she just looked, and she had this real pitiful look on her face, real sorrowful, and she looked up. That's all she did. And then the elevator door came back open, and I walked in the elevator, and I told my friends what I'd seen. And of course, they didn't believe any of that, and I just said, well, let's continue going out to the top. When we got to the top of to the observation deck, as soon as I was the first one out the door, as soon as I opened the door, I heard a woman scream. And I ran over to the edge, and I seen a woman falling, going straight down, and she was looking up. She fell, she hit, and that was all I seen. And there wasn't anything else there. Now, I've heard stories about a girl that supposedly committed suicide by jumping off the top. I really don't think she's committed suicide. I really think she was pushed. but that's pretty much the extent of what I've seen and heard. You can walk through these halls just about at night, and you can just feel it as you walk through the halls, especially the second and third floors. Especially those floors, you can just walk and you can just feel them. You catch glimpses of ghosts walking around a corner. You get to that corner, there won't be anybody there, you know. It'll look as real, you know, as dark as it is out there. It'll look like someone's actually turning that corner. You get there and there won't be nobody there at all.
This beautiful valley in northwest Arkansas was first settled by the Blackburn family in 1832. The community of War Eagle established here was named after the beautiful War Eagle River that flows through the valley. Today, the region looks much like it did over a century ago, when a young rebel soldier was killed here. Over the years, many fishermen floating the river have been shocked to see what appears to be a Confederate soldier walking his post along the riverbank near the old War Eagle Cemetery. Most of those living in the area feel it is the ghost of noble Hamilton Moore, guarding the natural beauty of the area. Just outside of Berryville, Arkansas, deep in the Ozarks, there's a big old cave called Cosmic Cavern. First discovered in 1845, it has also been known as Mystery Cave. Old Indian lore has it that this is a place of magic. The man who owned the cave around the turn of the century was a fiddle player, and over the years there have been many reports of fiddle and trumpet music coming from the caverns. Farmers in the area have even reported hearing music coming from their wells.
Over the years, back in the 30s and 40s, there was several people that used to own the cave, and one supposedly was a fiddle player that came down and played fiddle music in the cave, and there were several springs that run out of the side of the hill, and the music from the fiddle was supposedly heard from those springs. And also in the past, a man that used to own the cave played the trumpet down here, and the sound would have really carried in the cave, but they also reportedly heard the sound coming out of the area springs also.
I'm talking about, this must have happened many years ago when I was just a kid, probably 8 or 9 years old, and Billy Stanfield and me on a dare went up to the Cosmic Cavern at night one time. We had made torches with broom handles and burlap bags wrapped around them with baling wire and dipped them in coal oil. And we went up there just to see if the stories were true, that there was fiddle music coming out there, that there was some former owner who had died and who still played fiddle music up there at night. And we went into the cave, and we were a little bit nervous when we went up there. And I admit that I did not hear music, but we ran away when Billy Stanfield told me that he heard it. And I confess I did not hear it, but he claims he heard it, and we took off.
We've had several reports of different things that happened in the cave from previous guides. Anything from light bulbs being unscrewed to sounds on the intercoms down here that was strange. So my stepson got 2 psychics over here from Eureka Springs, and they stayed in the cave for quite some time, and they did feel the presence of another spirit. In fact, one said there was 2 spirits. We had another lady on a tour she didn't realize she had the psychic power, but she definitely felt the presence of what she felt was a female. And the female, somehow she felt that this female was very old, probably being an Indian. We've also been told that there was a couple of people that got in a boat and that came in the cave, and these 2 fellows never came out of the cave. So that might have something to do with the 2 spirits. We don't know. We've had several different psychics give us several different answers.
I have cattle up there near that area, and I have a feeling that I have heard in the evenings when I've gone up there to take care of those cattle. They are acting really nervous, really skittish, not like cattle at all, more like horses that are high-spirited. And I think that music coming out of those wells surrounding that cavern
are what's causing them to behave that way when I've been up there to take care of them. It makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It's a strange, strange feeling.
In the little town of Lincoln, Arkansas, they say you can hear music being played in the house once owned by Eva Gardner. When I visited the old home of this peculiar woman, who claimed to be a silent movie star, I felt a strange presence. Local folks swear that from time to time, you can still hear her favorite music, boogie woogie, coming from the old abandoned home. Not far from Joplin, Missouri, near the community of Hornet, what has become known as the Spook light frequently appears. It moves around right to left, forward and backward, disappearing and reappearing. Reports of it go back 100 years. Many people who have lived nearby have been so unnerved by it that they have moved away. It scares the daylights out of horses and other farm animals. It was recently investigated by the U.S. Corps of Engineers. It might be electrical energy or reflected light or spirits from the Indian burial ground in the region. Whatever it is, it's definitely from someplace in the unknown.
Back in the early 60s, was playing with a dance band, and we were playing in Joplin, Missouri, and so we heard about the Spook light. And so one night after we got through playing at the club, the band jumped in our old van and headed out to see the Spook light. And we got out there, and sure enough, it was there. It was kind of a secluded area on an old country road, and it was pretty well covered on both sides by trees, and so that in itself was pretty darn spooky. But it didn't take us long to stay there very long, and the light did appear, and it was probably somewhere around a third to a half a mile down this road, which, as I said, was a lot of trees on both sides of the road there, and this light appeared, and it would go from kind of one side of the road to the other and kind of jump around, and you could see it in the far distance, and it would come closer and closer the longer you stayed there. It would come closer, and it appeared that it would get up to probably, I would say, 100 feet of our vehicle, you know. And it was a pretty darn eerie sight. And one night, we were captivated by the experience, and probably for a straight week there, every night after we get through playing at the club, and it wasn't because we were inebriated or anything like that. It was a true experience. But we kind of got captivated by the experience, and we would go out for probably 10 nights in a row there after we get through playing at the club, and go out and see this darn thing. And there wasn't a night that we weren't out there that we didn't see the light. And we even had, on the weekends, we'd come back to Springdale and spend Sunday night, and we told people around here, and we even had quite a number of our friends and our wives came up there, and they experienced the same thing we saw, and it was pretty captivating to them. One night, we were in an open old MG convertible. A friend of ours had come up to visit us up there, and we told him about the Spook light. So there were 3 of us got in his little MG convertible one night and went out there. this is after we had visited probably 8, 10, 12 times, so we weren't scared of it then. So we got pretty brave and went out in his MG convertible, and sure enough, the light appeared, and it came up quite close to us as it normally would, and so we decided we would drive up to it and just see what would happen, So we, Mac started his car up and took off after it, slowly at first, and the light started going backwards then and jumping from one side of the road to the other, And so it seemed to get a little faster. As we got faster in the car, it got faster. So we were chasing this thing down this long stretch of road with the trees on both sides, and then we got out of the tree area, and the darn light would jump fences, and we were going at a pretty high rate of speed. I'd say we were probably doing 35, 40 miles an hour, and it would disappear, and then it would appear again, and it was. I remember there was an old church house out there somewhere in a graveyard, and it was out in the graveyard jumping around too, So it's quite an experience.
In the valley of Aurora, Arkansas, a ghostly figure known as the Lady of the Valley walks. She was first sighted over 50 years ago. A local fellow was walking home at dusk when he saw what he described as the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. She was dressed in white lace, but there was just something very strange about her. Then she disappeared. Over the years, other folks have reported seeing her, but nobody knows who she is. It is believed she is the ghost of a young girl who died on her wedding night.
It was right over there, and his brother come in first, and his name was McElhaney. And my daddy's name was Jess McElhaney. And his brother, he kept talking, and he asked if he seen something. Well, Daddy, when he come in, there was something run across the road in front of him. And he thought it was a possum, and he took after it. And he run up to the fence. And when he run up to the fence, he seen her down in there, down in that pasture, not too far from the fence. And he said that she was dressed in white, and she had her hair come along back down here, and it was darker than her dress. And he said that her legs and her stockings or whatever she had on was darker than the dress. And he said there was a light all around her, and there was no shadow, nowhere. And he said that then he just come on home. And then his brother, Oni, he just kept talking, and finally he asked him, said, did you see anything in the trail as you come home? Daddy said, yep. Said, I seen a pretty woman. Well, he said, I seen the same thing. And so they went back the next morning. They was just young men. And they went back down there the next morning. They thought they'd seen an old stump or something, and the moon is shining on it. So they went back down there, and they investigated, and there was nothing that they seen that they thought that could have been. They was imagining it, And so now that's just about all I can remember.
Then there's the story of the Lady in Gray. This one comes from Noel, Missouri. The legend has it that back at the turn of the century, a family was traveling west when they forded this river near Noel. Somehow a baby fell from the wagon and was swept away by the current. Frantic, the mother ran up and down the riverbank, trying in vain to save her lost child. Ever since then, people have reported seeing her walking along the riverbank, looking into the waters below.
Story of the Gray Lady. The lady will be seen moving up and down the riverbank, along the bluffs, along the rocks, out of the brush. She's frantically looking for a lost child. This lost child was lost probably around the turn of the century. There was an immigrant family in the area, and they were trying to cross the river on a swinging bridge about a quarter of a mile upstream in a horse and buggy. And apparently the child
fell out of the buggy into the river off of this bridge. And this is the mother of the child, and she's trying to still find this child. And like I say, this happened around the turn of the century. And apparently, we don't know how far we'll go, but apparently this love of the mother for the child, she's carried this to the grave, and she's still searching for this child up and down this river.
Over the past century, many have reported seeing the ghost of Ed Clum walking in the yard as they drove past his old farm home. Ed Clum was convicted of a double murder on his farm near Pierce City, Missouri, and hung for the crime on April 15, 1887. Ron Triplett of Sarcoxy, Missouri, has seen the ghost of Ed Clum.
Yeah, I'd heard about some murders that occurred at this abandoned farmhouse in 1886. And so I'm curious about things like that. And I went out to look the place over and to see the murder sites. And the closer I got to this house, the funnier I felt. And I was in a path, and I was kind of looking down for arrowheads and different things. And when I got about 100 yards from the house, I looked up, and there was a man leaning against a tree in the front yard. And I just knew in my heart right away that that had to be a ghost, that he wasn't supposed to be there. And so I stared at him quite a while because I just had the feeling if I looked away, well, when I looked back, he wouldn't be there. So I must have looked at him for a good minute, maybe a minute and a half. Then I looked away and looked back, and sure enough, he wasn't there. So I went on up to the house, and these people that lived close by, their farm dog was with me. And as we started in the yard, the farm dog, the hair bristled up on his neck, and he growled low, and then he took off for home.
Donna Meineke reports a most unusual occurrence that happens annually in an old home near the community of Zion, Arkansas.
I was a young girl, and I was doing some babysitting next door to the home that we lived in. My family and myself lived in a two-story home with hardwood floors. It's a big home. And I was coming home around midnight one night, and I ran upstairs to tell my parents that I was home. And as I was getting ready to enter my parents' bedroom, I looked down. I just happened to look down and found a small pool of blood on the floor with a few little droplets around it. And it didn't scare me. I just stopped and looked down, and I thought, this is really strange. So I went in and woke up my father and said, Dad, you need to come look at this blood. He came out, and he was really puzzled. So we woke up my mom, and I have 3 sisters. We woke up the whole family and said, did any of you cut yourself? Did anybody here know what happened? And then we started getting a little frightened. We looked around and we said, no. And, your first instinct is to look up. There was nothing on the ceiling. But we decided to leave it there for just a little while because thinking it appeared, maybe it would disappear. But the next day it was still there, so we decided to wipe it up and not worry about it. So we really forgot about it. This happened in November. And then the next year, in November, we were all at school. Kids were at school and Dad was at work. Mom was cleaning the house, and she was vacuuming and going in and out of her bedroom. She happened to look down, and in the same spot, there was this pool of blood again, with little droplets of blood around. And she really got scared, just because she had remembered that it had been there before. She called my dad, and Dad came home from work, and he was puzzled about it. We looked the whole house over. We checked out the animals. We had a large dog. No cuts, no nothing. When we left the blood there for a couple days, thinking we'll figure this out. We almost made blood samples, but thought, no, nobody believes us. We're just, we never did anything about it, but we did wipe it up, and we decided to call the families that lived in the home before we did. And we called one family, and they said, now that you mention it, we found blood on the walls.
These have been but only a few of the many stories in the Ozarks. Some may be true, others may exist only in imagination. I hope that each of you can return to these beautiful hills and explore for yourself the many mysteries of the Ozarks.